Welcome everyone to the Industrial Energy Transformation Fund briefing event for the Autumn 2022 competition window. My name is Jenny McDonald from Innovate UK KTN, and today I am hosting this event on behalf of the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy, supported by my colleagues Olivia Brown and Mike Mosley. So before we get started with the main presentations that you've come to hear from today, just go through some housekeeping to make sure you get the most out of today's event. So you will remain muted and off camera during the event as you're watching through YouTube, but we do want you to ask as many questions as you want to ask about the three competitions. So please use the chat box on YouTube, type your questions in there, and my colleague Mike Mosley, who's in YouTube land with you, will copy those across to us so that I can put your questions to BEIS during the Q&A session. I would say, though, please don't wait until the Q&A session to start typing your questions in, mainly for Mike's sake. He'll be doing a lot of rushing around. But if you could, as you're watching the presentations that you're going to see this morning, as a question occurs to you, type it into the chat box straight away. And that gives BEIS a chance to think of the answers as well that they're going to give you at the Q&A. So it'll help a smooth running of the event today. As we're on YouTube as well, we have over 450 people online today registered for the event. So please do take this opportunity to network on YouTube as well. Introduce yourselves, maybe say what your interest is in the IETF, and you never know, you might find a partner to work with today at the event. You'll be able to network again later on as well through the networking platform. Today's event is being recorded, and you'll receive a link to that recording, as well as a link to the presentation slides that you're going to see today after the event. So you can share that with colleagues that weren't able to attend or watch again yourself as well. And finally, after today's event this afternoon, you'll be able to book one-to-one meetings with BEIS to talk in confidence about your project ideas. So if you want to, if there's something that you don't want to say during the Q&A session in this open forum, but would like to talk to BEIS or myself as well, then you can come and join us on the Meeting Mojo platform. So this is a dedicated networking platform that's been running since the start of the IETF back in the summer of 2020. So there's over 450 people on there as well who are all interested in the IETF. So as well as booking a one-to-one meeting with BEIS or myself for this afternoon, you'll be able to direct message those people on the platform if you want to talk to them about potential project ideas. So now looking at today's agenda, so this is the welcome. We have then two presentations about the competitions itself. So first of all, you'll hear about the scope of the three competitions and the eligibility rules, about whether you can lead a project or whether what you want to do would be in scope. We'll then have a presentation on the application process itself. So how to register on BEIS's portal, what to expect on the application form. We'll just go through some of the main details surrounding that. And then you'll have your chance to ask questions during the Q&A. So as I say, you can ask questions when we get to 10:45, but it'd be great if you can type them into the YouTube chat box as you think of them as you're watching the presentations. Following the Q&A, we would like you to complete a short survey using some software called Mentimeter. This is to help BEIS to sort of get some feedback from you on potential further funding. And there's no guarantees, obviously, on funding, but we would love your feedback on maybe what some of the barriers that have stopped you from applying to IETF, or maybe some gaps in the funding to help BEIS to shape future funding. We'll then have a short comfort break, followed by 12 companies that are coming along to do a 2-minute pitch about the technologies that they have to offer industrial sites. So all of these technologies that are going to be pitched today are eligible for the IETF, and it might help you to, again, find partners to work with. And then finally, I'll give a short presentation about the application support services. So there's a number of things that we're doing to help you when you apply into the fund, and I'll just go through those briefly so you know what help is there for you. and we should wrap up about 12 o'clock. We'll then have a short break for lunch. And if you do then want to book a one-to-one discussion with either BEIS or myself, so BEIS if you want to talk about scope or eligibility, and myself if you need help to find a partner, they will start from 1:30 onwards on the Meeting Mojo platform, as I've said. And that's it from me. So I would like to now get on to the interesting bit, the reason you're here today, and introduce you to Lily Tozer from BEIS. Lily is the head of the IETF capability building, and she's going to now present the competition scope and eligibility to you. So over to Lily.
Great, thank you very much, Jenny. Hi everyone, thanks for joining us today. It's exciting because this is our sort of final application window. I'll talk to you a little bit about some of the successes so far in terms of the applicants we've already funded, but we really do hope that you get your applications in for this competition round. So what I'll do is talk you through who's eligible to apply, how much funding is available, and the kinds of technologies that fit within the scope of the fund. As a bit of a scene setter, the reason that we're all here is because we're interested in meeting net zero by 2050, but we also recognise that that's a huge challenge, and for industry in particular. So to get to net zero, we need to reduce industrial emissions by 90% compared to today's levels out to 2050. And that will involve technologies such as resource efficiency and energy efficiency measures. Looking out into the future, we need to be paving the way to switch to lower carbon fuels using carbon capture and so on. And we've set out how that could be done within our industrial decarbonisation strategy that was published last year, and also within the net zero strategy. So worth taking a look at some of those documents where the graph on the right here is taken from. We want to do that by making sure that your businesses remain competitive and thriving. So that's really why the IETF was set up. We know that there are barriers to getting these technologies instated within your industrial sites. So the IETF is there to provide some funding, reduce those upfront capital costs, help you to do some studies, and thereby you can start saving money on your energy bills and you can reduce the costs of making those investments in the first place. We also want to bring down the costs and risks associated with some of those deep decarbonisation technologies that will be coming along a little bit later by helping the first movers to deploy those at scale. And we're really focused on industrial processes. So we know that that can be the hardest part of your industrial site to decarbonise. You quite often might have bespoke equipment and so on. So that's really what we're trying to tackle through this fund. And we're open to businesses of any size in England, Wales and Northern Ireland. The fund itself has £289 million to spend. Pleased to say we spent a large chunk of that, but we've still got funding to spend. So at least £70 million will be allocated in this window that runs between October, so obviously we launched yesterday, and we'll close on January the 13th, which unfortunately is a Friday, but we hope that that won't be bad luck for any of you. Jenny will talk a little bit later about how we can support you through the whole sort of scope of this window if you've got any questions about your application. And as always, for the phase 2 competition of the IETF will be split into 3 different strands. So you can apply to the energy efficiency deployment strand, the deep decarbonisation deployment strand, or the studies strand. Each of those competitions are self-contained and have their own budgets allocated for them. In terms of kind of who's who, so who do you need to speak to, who will you be engaging with through your application journey? So BEIS is running the fund. If you're familiar with the IETF in phase 1, you might have worked with Innovate UK, who will have done a great job working with you to support your application past it being set up. We're now delivering all of the scheme in-house, so you'll largely be working with the BEIS team, so myself and other colleagues on the call who'll be helping with your application, helping you to set up your project and then do ongoing monitoring. That means that all of the information about the fund can be found on gov.uk. We're also working with the KTN, so Jenny and team who are doing some brilliant further events like this one and have some other resources that you can take a look at online. And if you have a site in Scotland, or if your business is registered up in Scotland, then you can apply through the Scottish IETF. It's a sister scheme to our fund. It's very similar, so a lot of the rules that we'll talk about today will be quite similar. And they have a competition window that's opening up in parallel to us sort of later on towards November. If this has sort of piqued your interest a little bit, then the first thing to check is whether you as an industrial site are eligible to apply, or indeed if you're working with an industrial site as a client who would be eligible to apply. So the lead applicant must be carrying out one of these activities in this table. So that spans all sorts of energy intensive processes, from mining and quarrying all the way to data centres. You can check your standard industrial classification code, which is what we use to test whether your activity is in scope, by going onto Companies House. Generally, your account for your company will be registered with a SIC code. Sometimes, though, we do recognise that maybe that SIC code is out of date, or it perhaps doesn't reflect the true span of all of the different technologies that you are doing. If that's the case, that's no problem at all. You can get in touch with us. We can talk you through the process, but really what we want you to be able to do is identify the closest SIC code that represents your activity, and to be able to check that that falls within this scope. You're also very welcome and encouraged to collaborate with people so that you can have the best possible application and the best possible project. Collaborators can be from other industry, from academia, research organisations and so on. They must also be registered in England, Wales and Northern Ireland to receive funding through the competition. But you can also work with people as subcontractors, and there are no rules in terms of the geography of where they must come from in order to be eligible for support through the competition. If you are working with partners, we do also encourage you to sign a collaboration agreement, and there's more details around that online in our guidance. When you're applying for funding, you should look at our guidance and judge what kind of organisation you are, because that can determine what amount of funding you can receive. So small businesses generally can receive a more generous level of grant against your eligible costs, and larger businesses get a slightly smaller grant, but again, that can depend also on where you're based. So companies within different locations across the UK might be able to receive an uplift if it's a slightly more deprived area. And when we talk about eligible costs, what we mean is the costs that can be submitted within your application that we can provide grant funding towards. So for studies, typically the costs involved are all to do with the production of a final report. So that could be the cost associated with consultants that you might be working with, your own internal staff time, any equipment that you might need to temporarily test or get measurements from some of your equipment. And all of those different things can be counted as eligible costs, provided the costs are only attributed to the time in which you're using them. For studies, we're not generally funding research and development, so we can't provide grant towards the costs of developing a prototype or establishing a pilot or demonstration scale plant, for example. This is very much about conducting a feasibility or an engineering study on your site. And against those costs, you can claim this range of grant funding. So for feasibility studies, it's anywhere between £30,000 and it must be the sort of total cost for the project, and you can get grant funding up to £7 million against that feasibility study. The range of support is from 50% to 70%. So that means if you were getting a grant of 50%, you would need to provide 50% of match funding yourself. And that's very much the maximum subsidy intensity. So if you need less grant than that in order to make the project viable, I strongly encourage you to apply for less grant, because that will make the project overall better value for money. It will be more competitive in the competition. For engineering studies, so they're generally larger, more in-depth studies, and they'll generally require a little bit more support. So the minimum cost for those should be £50,000, and the maximum amount of grant that you can receive is £14 million. And again, the range of different subsidy intensities you can apply for is on the right there. If you're a little bit further along and you've perhaps done all of the preparatory work that you need in order to make an investment decision in the sort of technology that you think is right for your site, then you can apply to one of the deployment strands. So that was both the energy efficiency or the deep decarbonisation deployment strand. And there we can support you with a grant towards the costs of all of the upfront capital and installation costs on the project. We We can't support you with any ongoing costs. So for example, the operating costs of perhaps running with a lower carbon, more expensive fuel, but we can bring down that initial material cost, subcontractor cost, and equipment cost that you need to invest in. There is some specific rules around this for deployment projects that I strongly encourage you to look at, because really what we want to make sure that we're doing is supporting you in making an investment that isn't just a straightforward replacement of equipment that you might have on site. We want to be providing you with grant towards the costs of investing in the best available technology out there that will really drive a transformation in the way that you're using energy and producing emissions. So there's a helpful flowchart in our guidance that sort of shows you how you can really specify what your eligible costs are. I won't go through this in detail now, but please do take a look at it. Essentially what it shows is that if you've got a piece of equipment that on its own, you can show that the only purpose of that is to deliver an emissions or an energy saving. So for example, you're introducing a heat exchanger unit to recover energy, then the whole cost of that can be eligible for the fund. If, however, what you're doing is replacing an existing piece of equipment, such as a boiler, then what you generally need to do is provide the cost of the new equipment that you intend to buy and compare that to the cost of replacing your equipment with a like-for-like piece of like-for-like boiler that wouldn't deliver you that energy saving. And the differential between the two is what counts as your eligible costs, and that's what we can provide grant funding for. That can be a little bit complicated, so if you've got any questions, just come and get in touch with us as a team. And when you've established what your eligible costs are, this is the grant that you can receive against them. So it's between £100,000 is the minimum grant that we can offer, and all the way up to £14 million. And you can get between 30% and 50% of those costs covered by the fund. Please do be aware that in all the deployment projects, you need to have completed them. So that's have incurred all of the costs by the 31st of March 2025. So do have a look and see if the timings for your project fit within that timeline. And then for deep decarbonisation projects, the amount of funding that you can receive is slightly higher. So again, the minimum grant is £100,000, but the maximum grant is £30 million, and you can get between 50% and 70% of the costs covered. And that's really recognising that generally deep decarbonisation projects, which might involve switching to a lower carbon fuel or introducing carbon capture, they don't necessarily have a payback. So we provide a higher grant upfront to help you to overcome some of that initial investment barrier. You can also aggregate your proposals. So within any strand of the competition, you're able to aggregate up to 5 different projects. And this can be a useful thing to do if, for example, you've got smaller energy efficiency projects that don't quite meet that minimum grant threshold. And what you can do is aggregate 3 or 4 or 5 different proposals so that you're above the £100,000 minimum. Each of those different applications will be treated independently and judged on their own merits, but it will save you a little bit of admin and other things if you aggregate up your projects. Again, you can come and talk to us if you've got questions about doing that. I mentioned briefly before that the fund isn't really an R&D fund. So what we're looking to do is help you deploy or do a study into a technology that's already sort of reasonably commercially available. So for deep decarbonisation technologies, that means that they'll have generally achieved technology readiness level 7 or above. So there's a prototype out there in the world. Or for energy efficiency projects, it needs to be 8 or above. So that means that the technology has been tested through test and demonstration at a relevant operational site. And we are generally technology neutral. So you can apply to us with whatever different technology solution you think will work best for your own specific process. For the energy efficiency strand, the key is that it needs to generate energy savings before and after it's been installed, and that you can measure that and give us a clue as to what that saving will be in total. Sorts of technologies that fit into this might be process optimization, so that could be improving the measurement or the control systems that you have. It might be equipment upgrades, and it could be things like process and energy recovery as well. And then for deep decarbonisation, the technologies that are in scope will generally be anything that reduces the carbon intensity of your process. So that's switching to electricity, for example, from a fossil fuel. It might be retrofitting equipment so that you can use hydrogen, or switching away from gas to biomass and biofuels. But please do note that for those, we have quite a few different restrictions around the use of biofuels, so worth having a look at our guidance as well. Carbon capture is also in scope, which can be for utilisation or for storage. And then new for this competition, we've also expanded the scope so that any energy efficiency or deep decarbonisation project that would apply for the non-road mobile machinery on your site is also in scope. So as part of your overall process, you might be operating cranes, diggers, shredders, all of those things. If you can find a way to reduce the emissions or reduce the energy that they're operating with, then you can now include those within an application to the IETF. That's new to this fund, and we really recognise that there's quite a lot of projects out there that might benefit from this support. Sorts of things that are still out of scope would be anything that's a new build or an expansion to your site. So the IETF is really trying to tackle the emissions and the energy that you're producing from your existing industrial processes. We can't help you to set up a new factory. Anything that you'd be doing standardly as part of the everyday operation of your site, so repair and maintenance, again, that isn't in scope, and we strongly encourage you to remove any of those sorts of costs from your application when you're applying to us. Building improvements, so things like lighting and space heating aren't in scope. There's other places where you'd be able to seek support for those things, but we're really focused on industrial process equipment. And the production of fuels or installation of renewable electricity equipment is also out of scope, as is CHP, unless you're fuel switching. And then finally, I'll just leave you with hopefully what's a good sign of the amount of success that you can have with the fund. So we've had 5 competition windows to date, and we've supported over 100 different projects. They come from all over England, Wales and Northern Ireland, as you can see, both from inside industrial clusters and in more dispersed locations. And we had a really good mix of applications of different scales and sizes from all sorts of different sectors. There are case studies up online, so do have a look at those if you want some inspiration. We can also point you towards past winners' presentations and so on if you'd be interested in those. And that's everything from me. I'll pass you across to Marcus, who's going to talk more about the application process itself.
Thanks, Lizzie, and good morning, everyone. I'm Marcus Rosewell, part of the IETF team here in BEIS. And welcome to this section of the webinar where we'll focus on the application process itself, including some practical tips and the way that projects are assessed. To start with, I'd just like to remind you of the dates for the Phase 2 Autumn 22 window. The application window is open at the moment, and one of the key dates to keep in mind is the 13th of January 2023, which is when the application submission deadline ends. One other important date to note is that all projects must be completed by the 31st of March 2025. So how do you apply? You'll need to fill out the online application form, which can be found at the link shown at the top of this slide. If you're the lead applicant, you'll need to set up the account, create the application, and ultimately submit it, but you can invite others to collaborate on your application. If you already have an account from the previous windows of Phase 2, you'll be able to use your existing login details. If you have an account from Phase 1, I'm afraid you won't, and we'll have to create a new one. If you have any technical issues at any point, please do get in touch with us. Now for some top tips to help you fill in the application form. Please ensure that you save your work as you go along, and always before navigating away from a particular page, as your work will not be saved automatically. It would also be great if you could use relevant titles when naming projects or proposals, and be clear and answer the questions in full, trying not to leave any blanks. You must ensure that your answers, especially if they include numbers, are accurate and consistent with other responses in your application. Please ensure that the grant amount requested is consistent between the application form, the finance form, and the project benefits calculator, of which I'll go on to in more detail in a few slides' time. If there are any discrepancies and we cannot clarify the correct value with you, we'll use the value in your application form. Please be specific. Do not talk about wider site projects or plans unless specifically asked in the question, and provide clear, relevant supporting evidence where required or offered as an option. If you're unable to provide mandatory uploads, please get in touch with us to discuss possible mitigations. Where highly specific industry or engineering terms are used, please explain these so that they can be understood by a non-technical audience. There's a link here at the bottom of this slide, which you can watch, and more information and help can be found. So I'd now like to move on to the assessment process for each of the competition strands. Firstly, please note that it's a competitive process, so projects will be ranked against each other based on their scores. However, the three competition strands, studies, energy efficiency deployment, and deep decarbonisation deployment, are not assessed together, and each strand is ranked individually. After assessment, recommendations are made for ministers by the BEIS grant award panel following the assessment stage. Key criteria across all three strands are value for money and additionality. In other words, would the project have gone ahead without government support? So to start with, on this slide, I'll discuss the study strand first. There are 6 criteria with different weightings, as can be seen on the table on the left-hand side of the slide, and projects will need to pass minimum thresholds to receive funding. All projects must submit a project plan and risk register, in addition to the finance form, which I'll cover in more detail in subsequent slides. You must upload evidence to support your answers in the study cost and value for money section, and are strongly encouraged to upload supporting information in other sections where the option is offered. Good examples of supporting evidence are provided in the applicant guidance document. So moving on to energy efficiency and deep decarbonisation deployment. Just to remind you that these will not be assessed against each other, but there are similarities in the assessment process, so it's easiest to cover them together. Applicants will be assessed and scored against 3 main criteria. Firstly, the economic assessment, which looks at the costs, benefits, and risks of the benefits not being realised and the need for government support. As part of this assessment, you'll need to fill out a project benefits calculator, which I'll come on to in more detail in a second. The second main criteria is the transformational assessment, which looks at the compatibility of your project with the government's net zero ambitions. This is where the energy efficiency deployment and deep decarbonisation competition strands differ slightly. In addition to questions on net zero compatibility and replicability and scalability, you will also be asked to answer questions on how novel your project is for the DD competition strand. The final assessment criteria is deliverability. This will assess your plans for delivery, how you'll manage risks, your project team, and how you have justified your minimum costs. All projects must submit a project plan and a risk register in addition to the finance form. You must also upload evidence to support your answers in the economic assessment and project cost sections. Are strongly encouraged to upload supporting, you're also strongly encouraged to upload supporting evidence in other sections where possible. Again, examples are given in the assessor guidance. Projects will then be ranked before being considered by the BEIS grant award panel. The energy efficiency projects will be ranked according to their score for the economic assessment, and the deep decarbonisation projects will be ranked according to their score for the transformational assessment. As mentioned previously, as part of your application, you will need to download, complete, and upload a finance form for your project. This covers yours and your partner's costs where applicable, which of those costs are eligible to receive grant funding, and how much funding you are actually requesting. We also ask about other sources of funding. We expect you to apply for the minimum funding necessary for the project to go ahead. More guidance on this is provided in the form itself, but some points to know are as follows. You must ensure that all details are correct and in line with the relevant subsidy control rules and regulations. Please note that all DD projects will need to state whether they or any of their project partners are affected by the Northern Ireland Protocol using the relevant drop-down menus. Aid intensity levels of projects or partners covered by the Northern Ireland Protocol differ. The cost figures that you enter should be net of VAT. If, for any reason, it's possible to recover the VAT on certain costs, then you will need to explain this in the evidence that you submit. Please provide an estimate that is as accurate as possible and justify your cost estimates with evidence. Quotations, letters of intent, and indicative costing may be appropriate evidence, and the information will be reviewed by the IETF assessors. If you're applying for multiple proposals, for example, in an aggregated application, which was mentioned earlier, you must complete the separate tabs within the same finance form for each individual project. Furthermore, as part of your application for a deployment project only, you will need to download, complete and upload a project benefits calculator. You are asked to provide information on annual energy consumption, production levels and greenhouse gas emissions, both before and after completion of the project. You will also need to outline the calculations, assumptions and sources underpinning your inputs to this calculator. As part of the economic assessment, you will need to upload supporting evidence. So this is where this differs slightly to the finance form. If you are applying for multiple projects, for example, in an aggregated application, you must complete and upload a separate calculator for each individual project. So just as a reminder from what I mentioned at the start, you need to submit your application by 3 p.m. on the 13th of January. Please ensure you have submitted all documents and evidence required, and where possible, any other supporting information or evidence where the option is offered. This will help assessors ensure they have as clear a picture of your project as possible. The documents you're required to submit are detailed on this slide and are also covered further in the applicant guidance document. Once you've submitted your application, we'll carry out eligibility checks and then pass eligible projects onto our assessors for the assessment stage, which was described earlier. Successful projects will be required to pass all due diligence checks and accept the terms and conditions of BEIS' grant funding agreement before a final award can be made. Please factor this in when thinking about the proposed start date for your project. And just to finish off, a reminder that this is the final application window for phase 2 of the IETF. We therefore request that you make every effort to ensure that your application is submitted by 3 p.m. on the 13th of January. If you have any questions about any of the process or anything discussed today, please contact us at ietf@beis.gov.uk. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Marcus, and to Lily as well. Okay, so now, folks, we're going to move on to the Q&A session, and we've had a nice stream of questions coming in from you, so thank you for that. So I'm going to stop. The first one and the fourth question as well were very similar, so I'm going to put those together, and it was around future funding and what will happen once the IETF, obviously this competition window finishes in January, as we've heard. So will there be similar funding to support industry to decarbonise? And I'll put that question to Lily, first of all.
Yeah, thanks, Jenny. So at the moment, the very best thing to do to guarantee any future funding similar to the IETF is to apply now and really show that there's that demand out there from industry for projects. So you might not be ready for a deployment stage project at this stage, but if you're perhaps thinking about something and maybe a study would help you pave the way to get there, please do apply for a study. That really helps us to build up our case within government for why this support is needed, what the kind of great projects are that are out there still. And we'd also recommend that you do submit any feedback to us as well. So as I mentioned later on today, you can also get in touch with us on our email address and just let us know about what type and shape of funding might be useful to you in the future. It might not even be funding, it might be other kinds of support. The IETF runs out until 2025, which is the end of the current spending review, and that's why we can't at the moment commit to any future funding as to what that might look like. But there will be information posted up on gov.uk as and when new funds are announced, and that could include in the innovation space, so worth looking out at the Net Zero Innovation Portfolio that has support for earlier stage technologies. There's also all sorts of things going on through UKRI and others, and we'll do our very best as well if you do get in touch with us to signpost you to relevant funds.
Yeah, and I'd echo that. Please do fill in that Mentimeter survey, because the more information, the more details of projects maybe that you would like to do but won't be able to get into this window, and that's the type of evidence that BEIS needs to help them. Okay, so moving on, we have a question from, well, a couple of questions from Mark Ray. So first of all, Mark said, if you want to do a deployment in energy efficiency and a deployment in decarbonisation technologies, do they need to be on two separate applications because they're two different themes? And then as a follow-on to that, would they need to be delivered separately? For instance, if one didn't get funded and the other did, I guess. Rebecca, would you like to take that question for me?
Yes, Jenny, and thanks for the question, Mark. short answer is yes. If they are projects that go within different strands, then please do submit 2 separate applications. And just say you can submit as many applications as you like, provided they're all for separate projects. So please don't feel like if you've submitted one, then you won't be able to submit another one. We've talked about aggregated projects, so you can only aggregate projects if they are within the same strand. So if you go in the guidance and read the rules on how to aggregate projects, that's probably your best bet if that's something you want to do. And then as a follow-on, yes, obviously if they're in different strands, they will be separate projects, so they should be deliverable in their own right. Where you submit an aggregated proposal, you will be asked to indicate whether those 2 projects are, or 3 or 4 or 5 projects are dependent on each other, or whether they're all separate projects that can go ahead if they get funding individually.
Thanks, Rebecca. And I think probably, Rebecca, you could do the next one as well. So we had a question from Stelios Karyogeorgis. Sorry, terrible pronunciation. Sorry about that. Stelios is asking, do projects need to be collaborative, or can a single applicant apply? So Rebecca.
Yes, so single applicants can definitely apply. Collaborations can definitely apply. So yes, that's completely fine. All you will need to make sure you do in your application is show that you as an applicant can provide the expertise to deliver the project well. And then if you're in a collaboration, just show clearly, why you're in that collaboration, what expertise is coming from each separate partner, but definitely single applicants can apply.
And have subcontractors as well as partners, I guess, as well.
Yes.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Rebecca. Next one, we have Jonathan Hart, who's asking, can we, I'm summarising here, he's asking, can he have access to the funded projects? Because that would be really useful. So Lily, would you like to answer that one? When will the funded projects be available on the Gov website?
Yeah, great question. So we publish those as soon as essentially we've signed the grant funding agreement with applicants and all of the other bits and pieces are in place, so that we can get those published through our standard government routes. That can be a little bit slow in terms of the internal government process, so worth keeping an eye on the gov.uk page. New tranches are published every few months or so. There's a new one due relatively soon. There is a lag on that, so that doesn't mean that all the projects up on there are the only projects we've supported. I think there's around 30 or so that you can see. As I said, there's a further 100 that we've actually supported so far. We will get all of those details up as soon as we can.
And Jonathan, you should come to the Tech Showcase in November. I'll be talking about that later, but you'll be able to see some of the Spring 2021 projects at that event. Next up, Ying Lu is asking, are universities from Scotland eligible to apply if they're working with an industrial site in England? So the industrial site's the project lead, but can universities be partners? Rebecca?
Yes, thank you. So unfortunately, Scottish universities cannot be partners, project partners in an IETF application. If you check in the guidance that we've released, we do lay out the criteria that you need to meet if you're going to be collaborating with a lead applicant. It's a similar, I think there was another question on can EU partners be involved? It's the same as that. To be a partner, you have to meet the criteria and be a business registered in England, Wales or Northern Ireland. I would note, however, that it's acceptable if there are subcontractors that are based in Scotland or further afield, that's acceptable. But if you're not a business within England, Northern Ireland or Wales, you will not be able to claim costs as a lead applicant or a project partner.
Okay, thank you, Rebecca. And next question is from Stelios again. So which category would recycling or reuse projects fall into? Is that energy efficiency or decarbonisation? So Lily, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, so there's sort of two different routes. So first of all, we've expanded the scope of the scheme in phase 2 to include recycling and recovery centres. So that means if you've got any kind of technology that maybe falls in the scope of the things that I discussed before, so you've perhaps got a shredder machine on site that you want to convert away from using diesel to using electricity, then that would be in scope for support through the deep decarbonisation strand. Or again, if you wanted to recover energy, recover heat from your site, you could apply to the energy efficiency strand. In terms of recycling projects themselves, resource efficiency is very much in scope for the IETF. So the key there is that you need to be able to show that what you're achieving through that technology solution is a reduction in your energy consumed. So we're not looking across a whole value chain where there can be some really good savings, perhaps in the embodied emissions of a project from having more recycled content. What we really want to do is isolate the savings that you can achieve within your own industrial site, your own industrial process. So sometimes that can exclude some new recycling activities. If, for example, you wanted to install a new recycling plant on your steel site, because that's essentially net increasing your emissions or your energy consumed on your site, that wouldn't be in scope. But if you've already got that recycling capacity and you want to make it more efficient or reduce the energy consumed, then you can do that through the IETF.
Thank you very much, Lily. Next up, we have a question from John Patterson, who's asking, are cases without new equipment supported? So, for example, if you're using new software to optimize existing ovens, would that be okay? So, Annie, would you like to answer that one?
Thanks, Jenny. Yeah, I think for this one, John, it would be helpful if we could find out a little bit more about your proposed technology solution. So please do get in touch with us afterwards. But broadly speaking, this type of project can be supported if it exceeds the minimum threshold, so that you can demonstrate and quantify the savings that would be achieved.
That's great. Thank you very much. Next question is from Sam Lang, who's asked, if you were to deploy the same energy saving technology across multiple sites, would the grant cover this under one application, or would it require separate applications for each site? So this is around the aggregation topic. So Rebecca, would you like to take that one?
Yes, so that one sounds like it would be something that might want to go into an aggregated application. So it's not quite the same as just one single application, but you can aggregate multiple applications together. I would definitely advise getting in contact with the team to discuss it with one of our advisors to double check that it's that's the best way for it to move forwards, and you can check the guidance as well. But again, if it's, you can also submit as separate applications if that is what suits better. So yes, do chat to our team. It sounds like it could be an aggregated project there.
Great stuff. Thanks, Rebecca. The next question from Mark Ray. Do you have any guidance on how applicants might consider inflation over the project lifetime? Because obviously a project is going to could last for 2 years. So while still demonstrating that value for money, which we need in the application form. In particular, he says how to treat staff costs. So Lily, do you want to take that one?
Yeah, and it's a very good question, and we appreciate this is a difficult subject at the moment for many applicants. So the best thing that we can advise you is to put together your application in exactly the same way that you'd put it together if you were taking a proposal to your board. So what's the most sensible projection that you can make for what the cost of that project will be at the time that you come to install it. So perhaps you've got a quote at the moment at the point at which you're making the application. If you think that that quote won't hold in 6 months, 12 months time, and you are sort of very much justified then in putting in place an inflation sort of estimate on top of that quote, just please explain to us in the application form what you've done and why, so what you've based your expectations off. If that's standard for your company, we obviously don't want you to see you overly inflating your costs, but we will work with you at every stage once you're successful to make sure that the costs are reasonable and so on. It's definitely worth saying that what we can't do at a later stage is increase your grant. We can, of course, and unfortunately we will decrease your grant if your costs come in under what you've put in your original application. So I'd very much say, if in doubt, if you're sort of unsure about the range of the costs that you might be sort of getting at the point at which you're installing, do definitely build in that sort of sound, well evidenced contingency in terms of the inflation, including on your staff costs as well.
Thank you very much, Lily. Next question from Lee Bowen. Solar PV is the most obvious route to reducing emissions and costs. We're a high energy user. Why is this not funded under the IETF, the solar generation? So Lily, do you want to take that one again?
Yeah, and this is quite a common question as well. So we definitely recognise that at the moment solar PV is a very sound investment to make, and actually that's partly really why it's not included within the IETF. So there might be a quite good payback at the moment on investing in solar PV. It's a relatively well-established technology, and it's something that you can do without necessarily disrupting your industrial process itself. So we certainly encourage you to do that. There are some sort of other support mechanisms out there that might help you to do that. Again, we can try and signpost you to those. But in terms of the IETF itself, what we're really trying to tackle is some of that more difficult sort of process equipment type investment that maybe takes a bit more time, a bit more money, might be a bit riskier. So generally electricity generation, renewable electricity generation isn't in scope.
But would solar thermal be in scope?
Yeah, very good point. Yeah, absolutely. So if you've got a heat need on your site, and perhaps that would be quite tricky to convert to low carbon fuel, if you can invest in solar thermal, that's absolutely in scope.
Great stuff. Thank you, Lily. Next, we have a question from Alex Patrick Smith. So hi, Alex. Will the outcomes from the last round be announced, so the summer 2022, I think Alex is referring to, before this autumn round closes on the 13th of January? So Marcus, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, thanks, Alex. The short answer is that no, the outcomes from the summer 2022 window won't be announced by the closure of this window. But those who did apply to that summer 22 window should be notified an update on their application in early 2023.
Okay, thank you, Marcus. Folks, we've got plenty of time for questions, so we're coming to the end of the questions now. If you do have anything else that you want to ask, now's the time. Please do type them into the chat box for us. We'll be wrapping up in about 5 minutes' time. So the next question is from Shiva Shankari. Does the capital fund only cover the depreciation cost as with a, I presume he means with a innovation fund? If you were doing a demonstration R&D fund, the depreciation cost would be included. So does this capital fund cover that? I don't know who wants to take that one.
I'll give that one a go. So yeah, this is one of the things that might be quite different for the IETF compared to if you were investing in an applying to an R&D fund. So because we are fully expecting you to run this equipment on a permanent basis for at least 5 years after the fund closes, we'll fund you for the full costs of the equipment. So you don't need to take away the depreciation costs that might be sort of residual in that equipment at the end of its lifetime. So you can put in the full installation costs up front in terms of your eligible costs. The only thing that I would note there is to go back to that flow chart that I mentioned before. So whilst we don't ask you to depreciate the costs of your capital equipment, sometimes we might ask you to look at the difference between the really energy efficient piece of equipment you want to install compared to a like-for-like investment of that same equipment that wouldn't get you those energy savings. And it's that differential that we can fund. So it's a similar kind of approach, but slightly different in as much as what we're really trying to isolate is the cost fully associated with that energy efficiency improvement.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks, Lily. You could probably answer the next one for me as well, Lily, if that's okay. So Ash Gupta has asked, can a Scottish company working with an England-based utility or OEM qualify? Can a partnership with unlimited liability apply?
Yeah, so I'll take those in reverse order. So an unlimited liability company can apply to the fund as a lead applicant. Again, the key test is, are you undertaking an activity that falls within the scope of the fund? So are you a manufacturer, for example? If that's the case, then you can apply to us. In the application form, you'll see that we've got some different routes of questions that you'll be asked. If, for example, you can't provide a company's house number, we'll perhaps ask that you provide us with an HMRC code or something similar so that we can verify your account. Also to be aware that we do carry out a certain amount of due diligence on different companies, so you'll obviously need to be able to prove a certain amount of turnover or sort of whether or not this case is affordable for you. So that information might be less readily available perhaps for those sorts of structures of organisations, so you just need to be prepared to work with us to get us that information. And then having said I take them in reverse order, I'm sorry, Jenny, I've forgotten the first question.
First one was, can a Scottish company working with an England-based utility or OEM qualify? So sounds like not an industrial site.
Yeah, that's right, unfortunately. So utility companies are out of scope for the fund. They themselves would be very welcome to collaborate with an industrial site. If, for example, an industrial site found that they could save energy through making water savings and reductions, they could very much work with their water provider. But the water provider itself wouldn't be able to apply to us. And in terms of a Scottish company, the same rules that Annie mentioned earlier would apply, that Rebecca mentioned earlier, so that you wouldn't be able to be a project partner on a company if you're a Scottish site, but you could be a subcontractor.
Yes, but we do as well, just to remind everybody what you said earlier, Lily, that the Scottish Government does have their own IETF programmes. So if you want to work with Scottish-based industrial sites, I'm also supporting that fund, so do get in touch. Right, now we have a few questions now from Jonathan Hart. So the first one is, if an application's made for feasibility studies on technologies is utilised, so we've done the feasibility study, does the timescale rule out funding for the same suggested physical project under the scheme, assuming the project is feasible? So I think he's asking, can you apply for feasibility and deployment at the same time? Or will the time run out before you can apply? Rebecca, would you like to, have I interpreted that right, do you think?
So I think, to be clear, we've only got this window remaining in which to apply for funding. So I think you can't apply for a study and a deployment project in one application. Those would have to be two separate applications. So if you apply for a study in this window, there's not going to be another study, another window in which to apply for funding for the second part. I will also say that you don't need to have done a feasibility study in order to submit a deployment project. Obviously, like you can, if you've done the study already and you want to use the study as part of your application for deployment, as part of the evidence for why you're doing that project, that is very useful, but it's not necessary in order to submit a deployment project. So I hope that's answered your question, Jonathan.
I think so. So we're saying, yes, you can, if you wanted to apply for a feasibility and a deployment in this round,
yes.
But you need to be able to have enough information when you apply, particularly on the deployment competition, to be able to give enough information to the assessors. So it's a bit chicken and egg, I guess. You may need the feasibility study to gather the data that you need to be able to apply to the deployment and give that detail on the deployment competition. Okay, moving on. We've got...
Sorry.
Sorry, go Lily.
No, sorry, I'd just perhaps add to that as well that so we have independent assessors that are reviewing all of these applications, but they will be aware of the different applications that you've put forward. So if it looks like maybe you're not quite in the position as yet to be ready for the deployment, then you might see that your deliverability score sort of suffers as a result. So you might stand a better chance with your study than you would with your deployment project. So just to be aware that putting both in together at the same stage will reveal quite a lot about your readiness for deployment.
Thank you. And Sayola Barragan, do you cover biofuels production from upgrading landfill gas, so biomethane or hydrogen? Salman, would you like to take that one?
Hi, yeah. So the IETF doesn't allow any forms of fuel production. However, if you already have your biofuel source, it can help facilitate conversion of your on-site equipment to use those biofuels or hydrogen.
Thank you very much. Next question from Caroline Longman. We provide real-time IoT analysis of energy usage. We're looking for that's more of a partnering. We'll do that another time for you, Caroline. Although the next one doesn't give a name, but although solar PV is not covered, would using the energy generated by solar PV to develop a process, so fuel switching to solar PV, would that be covered? So Lily, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, absolutely. So space heating isn't in scope for the fund, sort of regardless of the technology that you might be switching to. So as I mentioned before, we're really looking at the industrial process itself. So unless the space heating is very specific to your industrial process, it won't be in scope. And the kinds of things that might fit in within that are, for example, rooms that you have specifically set up for drying materials, or perhaps for paint spraying. If you need temperature control within those and space heating within those, that would be in scope. But generally, I think, Jenny, you always put it very well. If you're using heat to heat up bodies and your staff, then that's not in scope. If you're using it for your materials and your processes, then that is.
That's great, thank you. It was actually a question before though, Lily. There's one on solar PV. The PV bit we wouldn't fund under IETF, but industrial sites can do a fuel switch to electricity that is being powered by solar PV, can't they, with the IETF?
Yeah, absolutely. So if, for example, you were switching your equipment over from gas to electricity, then we could support you with any of the on-site adaptations you might need in order to make that project work in terms of the infrastructure for the fuel switch itself. But that excludes the solar PV at the end that's powering it.
Okay, thank you, Lily. And we'll have to make this the last one, I'm afraid, guys, but we will follow up with you on the final questions that are in the list. Vince Alder is asking, we've just received Fast Start Innovation Award funding, so well done, to get to our technology to TRL 7 to 8 by March 2023. Could we apply now, even though it's not currently at TRL 7, I think is what he's asking. So Lily?
Yeah, I can perhaps take that one. So we do say at the point of application, essentially your technology needs to have been able to demonstrate that it's meeting that minimum technology readiness level condition. That's really so that we can do some verification and work with you to test that assumption. So if you're not quite ready yet, it's probably not in scope for the fund yet.
Okay, well, thank you to everybody from BEIS that's answered all those questions for us, and thank you to all of you for asking those questions. And as I say, there were 2 or 3 left at the end. Unfortunately, we've run out of time, but we will follow up with you after today's event to answer your question. Okay, so moving on, we're coming up to our comfort break now, but just before you go, because you can do this while you're making your cup of tea or coffee, as I said at the beginning, we'd love it if you could help us to shape future funding around industrial decarbonisation. So we have this short survey. It's only 6 questions for you to answer. If you type this website into your phone, into your tablet, into your computer, you'll come to a website and there will be a box on the screen asking you for a code. So if you then put in 13505508, that will take you to the survey and you can just work through the questions on there at your own pace. So we'd really appreciate it if you could do just a couple of minutes to do that for us. That really will help BEIS to build a case to take to Treasury for more funding. Also, during the coffee break, if you are one of the 12 companies that is pitching for us after the break, please come and join us in Zoom right now. Olivia will have sent you a link to the Zoom room this morning, so please do come and join us right now, and you can make your tea as you come. And then finally, another shout out for signing up to have a one-to-one with BEIS this afternoon. Once the event is finished, if you want to come and have a private chat with BEIS or myself, then you can register on the Meeting Mojo networking platform and book a 10-minute chat with us. But other than that, enjoy a cup of tea and coffee, and we'll see you back here at 11:10 to hear from those technology pitches. See you in 10. So hi everyone, and welcome back to the Industrial Energy Transformation Fund briefing event. We're now moving on to hear some pitches from some of the technology companies that have technologies that are eligible for the IETF. They're going to do 2-minute pitches, so it'll be very short and snappy, but they will share their technologies with you and hopefully their contact details so that you can get in touch with them if you think it's something that would be useful on your site. So for our pitches, thank you very much for giving your time to do this for us. You will have 2 minutes and you will hear my phone bleep. So we're going to be very strict and stick to 2 minutes. And we're going to start, first of all, with Darren Bryant from Heatcatcher. So over to you, Darren.
Thank you, Jenny. Good morning, everybody from Heatcatcher. Could I have a first slide? Which is, we are designing and delivering heat decarbonisation projects. We've done this for the last 10 years, got a lot of experience, has been an independent SME company in that although specific technologies we're not tied to anybody, we take the waste heat source and come up with the best solution of how to put it back into the process through waste heat recovery, either using high temperature heat pumps to decarbonise rather than using gas for hot water, or use waste heat to generate electricity. Could I have next slide, please? The project idea is that we're using waste heat as a source into a heat pump rather than using an air source or a ground source. This helps to improve the efficiency of the project. We are using that to produce hot water to switch from fossil fuel boilers. And we're producing hot water from now, I'll say 80 degrees there, but we're now doing projects of 90 degrees C. So the innovation really is where you've got a process you might be heating at one end, but cooling at the other. Use the cooling source to then feed back from the heat rejected from it to then put back into the front as a heating source to reduce the electricity required for heat pumps, which is going to be a large demand on the grid. So anything that can be done to reduce the electricity power is important. So using waste heat as a source is key. Our services are heat decarbonisation, roadmaps, grant funding application support, feasibility studies. We can do the detailed end design right through to project delivery. So we're really looking for industrial partners that have got a process demand for hot water and using continuous flow of low temperature waste heat, which is then available to recover to produce the hot water. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Darren. That's perfect 2 minutes. Next up, we have Andy Healy from Translational Energy Research Centre. So over to you, Andy.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Translational Energy Research Centre, got a little introduction here. We cover a whole range of energy production utilisation. Our unique selling point really is that we offer a fully integrated and scalable facility to help companies develop technologies and to deploy them into production scale. Could I have my next slide, please? For the IETF, the key offerings that we can provide to a partner would be feasibility engineering studies. We have extensive expertise in engineering and providing expert advice and trialling decarbonisation and energy utilisation technologies. That covers everything from existing decarbonisation and improving those through to some quite novel technologies.
Keep going, Andy, sorry. Keep going.
I was going to say, the only other thing I'd say is the partners we're looking for are energy intensive manufacturers, industrial, commercial companies, green energy manufacturers. We have got aviation aerospace there, but that's probably more related to fuel, so not particularly for IETF. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Andy. So next up, we have Arnold Gadbriggs from EGB Engineering. So over to you, Arnold.
Hello, good morning, everyone at the IETF, and welcome to the industrial site owners and partners and the audiences that have tuned into this event. My name is Arnold Gadbriggs. I am the Exec Director of EGB Engineering. So EGB Engineering is an SME company, UK registered company. and we are an original engineering design company with expertise in the field of power and propulsion. And we design and develop power solutions and complex engineering project systems. Could I have the next slide, please? So in terms of project areas that we focus on, as an original design company, we're really pretty much around the ballpark when it comes to energy efficiency. So we're not limited in our project scope, but main things that we will be looking at is essentially utilizing waste heat and carbon capture and energy efficiency within buildings and for industrial processes. The innovations that are part of what we provide, we look at the system holistically as a whole, and we have several in-house tools that we've developed that allow us to ensure that the best project or the best solution with value for money aids the decision to ensure that the best fit for what the customer needs is chosen. Services we can offer, these are pretty much, again, not limited to systems feasibility studies, complete design from design to development, and essentially managing the operational and supply chain process. We have robust engineering processes that we use to manage that. And again, we have expertise in mechanical, structural, and process engineering. And we are seeking site owners that are interested in feasibility and engineering studies, energy efficiency projects, and deep decarbonisation projects. Our details are there. Contact us.
Thank you very much, Arnold. And just to make it clear, the energy from waste, if it's heat recovery and reuse, that's fine. But not just general energy from waste, like producing biogas. And you did mention as well energy efficiency in buildings. IETF is just focusing on the industrial process, but you cover that too, which is great. So next up, we have Hossein Madani from Samad Power. So over to you, Hossein. I think you might be on mute.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for having me today. Hossein is here, Head of R&D of Samad Power. Samad Power is a small engineering company based in Milton Keynes. We have over 10 years experience in energy sectors, and our core competency is design and development of multi-fuel microgas turbine, and we are focused on core generation application. Second slide, please. If you can, yeah. We are proposing a modular CHP system based on microgas turbine. The system can provide high quality heat with suitable temperature, mass flow, and required pressure for industrial application. The system is ideal for industrial process that require direct heat from 200 degrees C to 1000 degrees C. The feasibility of this technology has already been demonstrated within commercial bakeries with indirect heat requirement, and the system will demonstrate better performance in continuous direct heat requirement processes. The prototype is currently at TRL 7 and is fully scalable, ranging from 100 kilowatt thermal heat upward. Our system is based on oil-free bearing technology and is suitable for line operation with low maintenance, especially suitable for food industries and pharmaceutical process, but not limited to those industries. The system has already been tested with various fuel, including natural gas, LPG, and mixture of hydrogen, and also 100% of hydrogen. We believe the prototype is suitable for fuel switching, especially to hydrogen and ammonia. And the system has the capability of scaling up to providing bespoke solution for industries. The co-generated electricity is up to 90% efficient. And we are looking for the industries with high heat demand requirement. Yeah, please.
That's Thank you very much. And just to say again, so natural gas CHP is out of scope for the IETF, but if you're fuel switching to hydrogen or the other fuels, then that would be in scope as a fuel switching project, and the TRL7 of that technology is then eligible. So next up we have Dan Perry from GHD. Over to you, Dan.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for the introduction. I'm Dan Perry, dan.perry@ghd.com. I'm from Gutteridge, Haskins and Davey, GHD. GHD is a global engineering and professional services consultancy. We're here offering our services to partner on the Industrial Energy Transformation Fund. So GHD has been working in the hydrogen space for over 50 years in the US and Canada, and also in the Middle East, UK, Asia, Australia and New Zealand. We have more than 50 hydrogen-related projects in the last 5 years alone, spanning the whole hydrogen supply chain, so production, storage, distribution and use. In the UK, we have more than 300 employees working across 9 offices. We have a dedicated hydrogen team supported by energy solutions and industrial solutions business groups. We cover all engineering disciplines and for all stages of the project life cycle, for example, including planning and permitting support. Next slide, please. So GHD provides a full range of integrated services. We are by no means limited only to hydrogen projects. We can help with all 3 strands of the IETF, studies, energy efficiency and deep decarbonisation. The sorts of things we do include developing strategies and tools, including carbon reduction pathways and monitoring tools, delivering end-to-end projects, assessment of technology and process options to decarbonise. So some examples of our work include our successful application to BEIS and participation in the long duration energy storage program earlier this year, where we demonstrated the feasibility of grid electricity produced hydrogen, long duration storage and end use in industry. We've also completed a boiler fuel switching project from natural gas to hydrogen, and we're currently doing some fuel switching work with a major industrial client. So if any of this is of interest, please message me or email me, dan.perry@ghd.com. Thank you.
Perfect, Dan, that's spot on. Next up, we have Claire Flanagan from PNO. Over to you, Claire.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and thank you for having me today. I'm representing PNO Consultants Limited. We are a European market leader in funding and innovation services. We have offices across Europe, and I'm based in the UK team. We have extensive experience of various national funding competitions, including the IETF. We have an extensive client base of organisations that we work with, including high-tech SMEs, multinational enterprises and leading universities and research centres. We are active across all sectors, including energy and manufacturing, as is the focus of the IETF funding. On behalf of our clients, we secure over £1 billion of public funding each year for innovation and development projects. Our services span the entire grant acquisition process, so we can help you develop projects and actually put together applications for funding. So if that's of interest, you can feel free to get in touch with me and have a discussion about how we could potentially support you with your application. And my contact details are there on the slide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claire. That was impressive. That was a minute. Next up, we have Dan Stover from QIO. Over to you, Dan.
Good morning. I'm Operations Director at QIO. We're a UK startup that develops AI solutions to help industrial companies improve energy efficiency of their manufacturing processes. We've prototyped our software with a number of companies covering glass, brickmaking, steel, data center, and cement applications. We've seen up to 15% reduction in energy use without replacing equipment or installing additional monitoring. We're seeking industrial partners to deploy our software and evaluate the savings which can be made in your industry. Next slide, please. Next, thank you. Today, inefficiently operated plant machinery is responsible for about 7% of global emissions. According to the IEA, these could be avoided through improved energy and materials efficiency measures. We're proposing deployment of our AI software solution, Foresight Optima, which automatically learns and recommends the best control settings to use on specific equipment, such as pumps, compressors, furnaces, boilers, and so on. The recommended settings ensure that the assets are consistently operated at a higher efficiency, using the minimum amount of energy to produce the maximum amount of high quality product. What's innovative about it? It's not a reporting analytics tool. This is real-time automated system that runs in sync with your plant's SCADA or MES control systems and guides operators what to do in real time. We're looking for industrial partners who'd like to trial it on their site, equipment vendors who would bolt it onto their control systems, and consulting partners to help deploy this as a wider part of digital transformation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dan. That was great. Next, we have Christian Albrecht from Naked Energy. Over to you, Christian.
Hello, everyone. Good morning. Thank you, Jenny. So Naked Energy are a renewable technology design and engineering business based in the UK. We have over 30 patents on our technology, and we're focused on innovating in the solar heat category. We've deployed our technology across over 60 projects in 13 different countries and are focused on decarbonising heat for commercial and industrial industries. Next slide, please. So we have a number of core innovations in the technology. In the first section, you can see our hybrid PVT evacuated tube collectors. These are globally unique solar thermal and solar PV collectors, so it produces both electrical and thermal energy in one design. On the second slide, you can see the orientation and nature of the array. So our collectors sit flat on the roof with an integrated reflector, which means greater collector area per square meter of available roof area. So you're able to get more generation in the available roof space. You've also got less wind loading issues, no need for roof penetrations or roof ballasting. So it's suitable for the large flat roofs that you see in manufacturing sites. We get about 3 times more energy per square meter compared to conventional solar technologies, and about 5 times more carbon savings due to the heat displacement compared to PV displacing electricity. We can supply up to 120 degrees Celsius, so on the low temperature end, but suitable for things like cleaning in place, drying, or preheat for steam. And we're looking to work with end users, so businesses looking to decarbonize heat, or indeed many of the other people speaking today, consultants and project designers who are looking for novel technologies to support client carbon reduction objectives. Thank you very much for your time.
Perfect. Thank you, Christian. Next up, we have Carbon Clean and Laura Gillians.
Thank you, Jenny, and a big thank you to the KTN team for hosting today's online briefing event and the opportunity for Carbon Clean to pitch. Carbon Clean is a leading cost-effective point source carbon capture technology company. We're helping hard-to-abate sectors, including cement, steel, refineries, and energy from waste to decarbonize. With over a decade of experience, our first fully commercial industrial carbon capture plant has been operational since 2016 now. That's Tuchakor and alkali chemical fertilizers in India. It's also a great circular carbon economy case study, as all of the green product produced by the carbon capture plant, soda ash, is acquired by Unilever and used in their surf washing detergent. So today, Carbon Clean has 49 operating plants and technology references across the globe, capturing 1.7 million tons of carbon dioxide. And next slide, please. So we offer a range of solutions, conventional on the left-hand side of the slide there, which is engineered to order, and the Tuchakor reference is a great example of this. We also undertook the FEED study for the St Fergus gas terminal, part of the Scottish cluster. Ultimately, our execution strategy is simple, and our key strategy is built upon our modular, scalable, and standardized solutions, those in the middle and on the right-hand side of the slide, which make carbon capture incredibly cost effective. So our semi-modular solution in the center there containerizes up to 80% of the equipment, and most recent technology references would be India's first carbon capture plant for a blast furnace that we commissioned last September for Tata Steel, and back end of last year, a demonstration plant also in Japan with a capacity for 10 tonnes per day for Taheo Cement. On the right-hand side, we've got the next generation technology currently being commercialized. Close of our record Series C funding round of 150 million is enabling us to co-invest with technology deployment partners to accelerate the scale up. So currently scaling up to 100 tonne per day with both Cemex, Chevron, Veolia in the UK, and Cemex in Germany. and that is combination of two process intensification technologies, Carbon Clean's AP, BEIS, CDR Max proprietary solvent and rotating packed beds. Given it's solving the main historic barriers to deployment, cost and space, it's bringing it to many more industries. So if you're a cement, steel, refiner, energy from waste player looking for a carbon capture technology provider, my email was on the first slide. I'll also pop it in the chat. Please do get in touch.
Thank you very much, Laura. Next up, we have Tom Grand from 7 Acre. So over to you, Tom.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you, Jenny. My name is Tom Grand. I'm from 7 Acre. We're a specialist geothermal commissioning agency seeking to really expand on the provision of heat for organizations looking to effectively exploit the increasing investment that's happening within the development of the UK heat economy. Some of you may be aware that there's over £600 million of new funding going into city centre heat networks. And geothermal, it's fair to say, has been, I would argue, an underutilized resource within the UK heat economy. People have focused to a large extent on the potential for power, but actually there is significant potential, as we'll discuss, around heat. Next slide, please, Jenny. So what we're looking for and hoping to work with partners on this call for are organizations with high energy heat or cooling demands that are interested in exploring the potential for geothermal within their industrial site. We firmly believe that proven resources such as the Southampton District Energy Scheme, which has been running since 1986, are a strong indicator of the huge potential for geothermal energy within the UK, and in particular heat. And so we're also clear that the UK is lagging behind. Many people don't know that in Paris, there are over 50 geothermal provisions, and in fact, the airports are now being heated through geothermal energy. And it's our proposition that with the right partners, we will be able to identify the return on investment. We will qualify the geology and the ability to provide geothermal sites. And we invite any partner who is looking to make use of a base load heat resource for the long term to contact us and work on a project.
That's great. Thank you very much, Tom. So great support if you want to do a feasibility study on geothermal for your site. Next up, we have Howard Lowe from Enverse. So over to you, Howard.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Jenny and the team, for organizing this event. So a brief introduction of Enverse. Enverse is an IoT and AI company where we help our customers to bring actionable analytics and automated control to their assets. And what we do is that we provide the redeployable actionable analytics to our customers so they can recycle the same algorithm to not just within their plant, but the very same set of algorithm can also be used by other customers within our ecosystem as well. And we are growing our library of analytics and control algorithm for our customers. So on the right, you can see some of the projects that we do. We are very agnostics when it comes to the type of projects. We have grid flexibility project. We have HVAC control project in Turkey. We have 40 megawatt of rooftop solar where we control and automate some of the export from the solar to the grid. We also control down to the level of air conditioning system in a coffee shop. And that's what happened in most of the projects we have. Next slide, please. So the idea behind us is actually to have the machine learning algorithm that can be bespoke, and the machine learning algorithm can be bespoke and expensive, and we want to make them more cost effective by redeploying them to other customers. So instead of having one platform, one algorithm, you have one platform, a library of algorithms to choose, and that's what we have been operating for the past 3 years. And we have been expanding the library. We build more use cases with the customers and the partners. When they have a requirement, they come to us when we build it. And we are not just a software company. On case-by-case basis, we do offer hardware and software system integration. So that includes deploying of the actual PLC to interface with the assets that you have and to control it. We do offer development of the customized dashboard. We know everything have to be bespoke to a certain level. We make sure that everything makes sense for you to improve your operation. And so for here, we want to look for the partners who want to like co-develop so the algorithms, site owners who actually have the sites and say want to develop algorithm to optimize the whole process control. We know that this set of system of parameters is useful, and then these parameters can also be useful for other partners. So ideally, we have like 2 to 3 partners that's doing the similar things for us to work on the same algorithm at the same time. My contact is in the first slide. Anything, please reach out to me. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. And just to say, all of these slides will be shared with the audience, so you will have all the contact details of the pictures you're seeing today. But last but not least is Matt Candy from Steamology, who's going to tell us about net zero steam generation.
Hello, my name is Matt Candy, and I'd like to introduce you to Steamology. So renewable energy is plentiful but intermittent. 10,000 times more solar energy strikes the earth every day than we use, and it's free. Direct electrification is an ideal solution, but about 20% of steam and heat applications are hard to directly electrify. So Steamology can help. Renewable energy can be used to power electrolysis, and electrolysis creates hydrogen and oxygen gas. The gas is collected, compressed, and stored in tanks, and these gas tanks are the energy storage, the battery of our system. And when the sun's gone down or the wind stops blowing, energy is demanded, gas is combusted in our steam generators. The combustion of hydrogen and oxygen creates hot steam. There are no emissions. There's no NOx, no SOx, no CRT, CO2, no particulates. The only product to combustion is water. The steam or heat is available to 250 degrees centigrade in saturated steam for open or closed loop applications. Purities can be used for clean steam, pharmaceutical, and sterilizer applications. We also have zero emission diesel engine replacement power turbines. The water is produced that can be returned for electrolysis. Next slide, please. Our equipment is fully recyclable at the end of life, respecting to cradle practice, engaging with the circular economy and ESG targets for both the biological cycle and the technological cycle. Steamology are gaining experience in food and bev, distillery and laundry sectors, as well as diesel engine replacement. And we're looking for IETF partners with industrial projects at 1 to 10 tons of steam an hour or 200 kilowatts to the megawatt in the non-road going mobile machinery, where the energy density, the long life and cost effectiveness of Steamology steam have advantages over electrification and boiler systems solely reducing emissions, as well as competing with battery and fuel cell systems. So thank you for listening. My name is Matt Candy, and please let us know if you have any questions so that together we can make green power make a difference.
That was great. Thank you, Matt. Just to say on that one, obviously, the electrolysis and renewable energy part is out of scope, but Matt's steam turbine that's generating that clean steam from hydrogen and oxygen, that would be okay. Okay, so thank you to all of our 12 pictures. There were some great, lots of different types of technology that you could use on your industrial site. So I hope that's given you some food for thought about what you can do. I'm going to finish now with the final presentation of today's webinar and talk you through some of the support that's available to you as you apply into these competitions. So I'm going to talk about how you can find out more about the guidance, competition information, how you can, what help there is with the application process itself, help if you need to find particular partners or subcontractors to work with, and some more help. Obviously, we've just seen those pictures, which were great, but there's more that we can do to help signpost you to relevant technologies for the IETF. So first of all, competition information. As Lily and Marcus said earlier, there is plenty of information on the IETF website. The guidance is available at the link that's on the screen at the moment. You've seen quite a lot today. Lily and Marcus have gone into a fair bit of detail for you, but there is still more in the guidance. So we'd strongly recommend that you read that through before you start your application, just to make sure you're absolutely clear of all the rules. Having read that guidance, if you have any questions, particularly around the scope of what you want to do and your eligibility as an industrial site to lead, or as a technology or delivery partner to support, then please get in touch with BEIS on the IETF email that you see on the screen now as well. That will go straight to Lily and the gang, and they will come back to you to let you know if you are in scope. The reason that that is important, if you've not bid for public funding before, the application form is not a 5-minute job. It's going to take you quite a bit of time and effort to do. So it's better to know upfront that what you want to do is in scope before you go to all the trouble of filling in the application. So send an email to that email address, and if you could pop in the subject line eligibility screening, then they'll prioritize those emails and come back to you with a confirmation of your project idea. The next thing that we're doing to help around scope of the competitions, you heard from Lily earlier on that we have a new aspect to the IETF competitions in this round to do with on-site transportation. So we thought it was quite useful to do a short webinar, and it will be a lot shorter than today, on the 26th of October, to talk you through that new aspect to the scope. So focusing on non-road mobile machinery like forklifts and crushers and off-highway trucks and anything that you might be using as part of your industrial process. So this webinar will go through that in more detail, and we'll also be joined by BEIS's Science and Innovation team, who are going to talk about the Red Diesel Replacement Fund as well. So this is an R&D fund this time, because the Red Diesel Replacement again relates to non-road machinery and vehicles, and is targeting mining and quarrying sectors, which are in scope for IETF too. So if you fall into those areas, or if you have a different industrial sector that would like to bid into the IETF in this area, then that would be the place to come to find out more information. And again, another opportunity to ask questions once you've had a chance to read the guidance. The help with the application process. So as well as having that dedicated IETF email where you can contact BEIS, we also run fortnightly webinars. These are just Q&A sessions. There's no presentations whatsoever. It's not another briefing event, but it gives you the opportunity to put your question to myself or to BEIS. We'll both be on at all of the clinics. About the scope of what you want to do, the eligibility rules, anything about applying, finding partners, anything at all to do with our 3 competitions under the IETF programme. You can register at the link I've provided there. As I say, they're fortnightly webinars. You'll see all the dates listed. If you tick all of them, then that is you registering for every single clinic. So just click for the next one, I would say, because that will probably answer your questions. You can always come back and register for another one later on if you need to. The second thing that we've done, we actually made these in the spring window this year, but we've created some tutorials, video tutorials, to take you step by step through the application form, and also how to register on the BEIS's portal, which is where you do your application form. So that's really useful if you've not bid into the IETF before. I'd recommend, again, having a look through them. They are on the Gov website as well. So as you're going through the application, you will see the videos there. So you can watch them. You can look at the videos through links that are actually on BEIS's website. But if you want, I've provided a link where you can watch them at your leisure as well. So all the information is there. Just helps you to understand exactly what BEIS is looking for in each of the questions on the application form, to allow you to produce a good quality application. And then in terms of help finding partners, we've mentioned this a couple of times today, but we have a dedicated networking platform. We've got over 450 people on there already. They're only on there because they're interested in the IETF. We don't use it for anything else. So if you haven't already registered, please do. Once you register, you get login detail, and then I'd recommend that you log in and actually go to your profile So across the top of the screen, you'll see a tab saying account. If you go into there, you can add more detail to your profile, and that will make it easier for people to find you. You can then direct message people that are on there at any time. The platform will stay open until the end of the programme, so March 2025, so you can message people throughout that whole time. It's not just for when the competition windows are open. And as has already been said today, we will be using this platform for your one-to-one meetings with BEIS and myself this afternoon. So the last thing now really to say is how we can help you to find these technologies to deploy either energy efficiency or decarbonisation. So at the beginning of phase 2, we set up a technology marketplace. It's an online platform that holds 5-minute videos about different energy efficiency or decarbonisation technologies that you could deploy. So as an industrial site, if you're not sure what to do, then you can register for access to the marketplace, and then you can view those videos at your leisure, just to give you some ideas. So all the videos have been vetted, so they are eligible for the IETF. We've got 27 videos on there at the moment from a wide range of technologies, so heat recovery, carbon capture, fuel switching, process optimization, energy storage, both thermal energy storage and electrical energy storage, and heat pumps. There's more as well, but just to give you a flavour of the types of things that are on there. And the companies have given their contact details. So having watched a video, if it's something you think might work on your site, you can get in touch with them directly. If you're a technology provider and you haven't already provided a video for the marketplace, then now's the time to do it. This is your last opportunity to add your technology video to the marketplace. The second link on the screen there will allow you to do that. You register and then upload your video, and that link will remain open until the end of this competition window, so 13th of January. This is an amazing opportunity for you to raise awareness of what you do and what technology you have to offer to there's over 150 industrial sites have access to this platform now. So there's lots of industrial sites out there looking for technologies to deploy. If you would like to record a video, but you're a little bit nervous maybe, or don't know how to go about recording a video, then we can help you with that. So when you go through the registration process, there is a question asking, would you like the KTN to film this for you? Just tick that box and then we will get in touch with you. It will be an online thing. We will record you while you present, and then your video will be put onto the marketplace. So we're trying to make it as easy as possible for you, because this is a great opportunity with that many potential customers waiting to hear about your technology. And finally, we're having our usual, I love having these live events, our technology showcase, which is taking place on the 17th of November in London. This is an in-person event, so you will be able to come and meet people in the real world. We won't be live streaming this event. We will record it, but you won't be able to join it online like you have today. And we will be showcasing funded projects from spring 2021 from the IETF. So there was a question earlier on in the Q&A about, how can we find out about what's already been funded? We have in previous tech showcase events showcased the summer 2020. These ones now spring 2021 have never been seen before. So brand new information, and we have 4 case studies already lined up for you. We have, if I can remember them, NSG Pilkington, Celsa Steel, Harsco Metal Recycling, and also a data center, Interzion, I think is how you pronounce that one. So they will be talking through, they're all energy efficiency projects. A couple of them are deployment, a couple of them are study projects. But again, you can come and actually ask them questions face to face about what they did. But they're giving you their view of how it went from an industrial site owner's point of view. We'll also hopefully have joining us somebody from BEIS's, again, Science and Innovation team, or heat team, I think actually, talking about the Industrial Heat Recovery Support Programme, which was a programme that ran a couple of years ago, but they are going to, again, talk about some of the projects that were funded through that support program to give you some ideas and introduce you to companies doing heat recovery. So it's well worth coming along. I hope to see you there, because it's a great opportunity just to chat people in the real world. Much better networking at a live event, I think. So if you'd like to join us, then register at the link I've provided there. And that's it from me talking about services. And that's it really from all of us today. We're very grateful for you for joining us, and I hope you found that event to be useful. The links, everything that you've seen today, the recording of the whole event will be sent to you, as I said earlier, but you'll also get a link to each of the individual presentations, including the pitches that you saw. So if there's a particular technology that you thought might work, you'll be able to get in touch with them when you receive the slides. You'll also get a link to the guidance and the events that I've just mentioned there in my final slides. So lots of information coming your way in the next few days. Just another plug, if you would like a one-to-one meeting with BEIS, it's starting from 1:30 today on the Meeting Mojo platform. So please do go and register on there and book your 10-minute slot with BEIS or myself if you do have any follow-on questions. And then finally, tech providers, please come and do a video with us. It's a great opportunity to raise your profile and hopefully bid into the IETF with an industrial site. So that's all from me now. I really look forward to receiving your applications in this window and wish you the best of luck with it all. But thanks again for joining us, and goodbye.